Well, good morning, almost afternoon, everybody. I can't thank you guys enough for your patience and persistence in getting us to here right now. And the thing of it is, as we just take a deep breath and settle in, we realize we're all exactly where we're supposed to be at exactly the right time, with exactly the right energy, coming together in this space and this time. Even if you're listening to this later after it's recorded, this is all exactly as it's supposed to be. So, and I bring myself to you today um, in a very personal way, unintended, but it works. No makeup, no hair done, no jewelry. Once we kind of realized the technicalities that were glitching out on us, we just kind of threw ourselves in to figure things out. And so I think it's kind of neat with the message that's coming through today that I'm just kind of here very raw with everybody. So let's see here. My first message had to do with Zoom, and so I don't think that applies much right now. Um, so we'll just start. Oh, go ahead and take a deep breath. Again, close your eyes and just center yourself, opening your heart to the circle of love of people that are here, for all those that will join us at any given time. Know that the message that's delivered today will hit some of us directly, will hit some of us a little maybe off center, and the rest of us are holding space for those that need this message right now. We're here to create that circle of support for each other as well as for ourselves. So we call in our collective ancestors, our angels, guides, guardians of the 6 directions, the 13 clan mothers, all of our teachers, especially Gloria, Dr. Goodall, Jean, my teachers. And as we enrich ourselves in the sacred circle of sentient beings all together, we call on their collective wisdom to help us open our hearts right now and our spirits, as today we contemplate God. We contemplate the unconditional divine energy in the universe. So, who is God? Who's God to you? What effect does God have in your life, if any, as that word or as whatever word you use for your higher power, creator, great spirit, universe? Okay. But today I'd really like to kind of explore how we think, how we believe, and how we connect to that higher power. In the realm of thinking, we have been conditioned to think of God in very particular ways. This is the sociology of God, okay? So there's an ancient parable about the elephant. So picture, if you will, many blind people with an elephant in the middle of them. And they can't see this elephant. They're just touching different parts of the elephant. So in contemplating what God is, you know, one of the blind people by a leg might say, oh, God's like a tree, feeling that leg. And that's the concept of this is God in front of you. God is like a tree. And maybe the person by the tail says, God's like a rope. And by the tusk is like a spear. The ear, God is like a fan. Or somebody just touching the side of the elephant, God is like a wall. They're all facets of the same animal, yet each person is experiencing what their perception of this is very differently. And they are all true. They're all true. And the kind of neat special gift of Angel's Landing being a spiritual center rather than being a particular religious, having a particular religious dogma or sect, is that you're allowed to explore and keep exploring that elephant blindly and figuring out, how you can experience this amazing God in front of you from all different aspects. But first, you have to kind of figure out where's the aspect you're already at. And many of you may already be there. And if you are, then I encourage you to explore the unknown of different areas. And if you're not sure where you're at now, then it's time to kind of dive in a little bit deeper and figure out what is right in front of you. What is your experience? Understanding that, your belief is one perspective, and you can broaden your perspective or hone in on your perspective. So that's kind of this idea of how we think about God. What is the way you think about God? How is that defined? Now we move into the philosophy of God and we talk about belief and what we've been taught, what baggage we're carrying, what belief systems have already been ingrained in us, and to kind of revisit those and say, does this still resonate? Is this still where I'm at? So it's really interesting. There's actually a new kind of field coming out called neurotheology. And Dr. Newberg is the one coming up with it and kind of fronting this. And neurotheology, the study of God and the brain. And he came across a really interesting. He did an experiment with some really interesting information. And so, in having various people with various beliefs sit in meditation, and it was meditating for about 10 to 12 minutes on who God is, or on God in general. I don't want to falsely represent his research. Meditate for, I think it was 10 to 12 minutes on God, period. And then they took an MRI of the brain. And what they found was that the frontal lobe, especially, had a lot more activity, a lot more blood flow, and was more highly activated, along with the brain as a whole, but especially the frontal lobe. So that was very interesting. They also did this with atheists, self-proclaimed atheists, people who did not believe in God. And they had them sit for 10 to 12 minutes thinking about God, which they didn't believe in, and they did not show the same brain activity on the MRI. They did not have all the juices flowing and extra red blood cells going to the frontal lobe and activating the brain more. So the interesting part about this research is the fact that belief is very important, number one. And number two, spending time in meditation actually gives you a stronger connection with that which you're thinking about. So whether you are clearing your mind to be a fertile place of God connection, or you're actually contemplating God, you are fertilizing that connection, that communication. And that leads me into that third piece. How are we conditioned to communicate? Is that serving our highest good? So we often talk about the form of prayer is our communication with God. Fabulous. But what does prayer look like to you? How were you trained in prayer when you were young? What were you taught about prayer? Do you do specific prayers that you have memorized, like the Our Father, like the Rosary? All good things, but just look at that. Is that the elephant in front of you? How much do you talk to God more casually, more personally? What's that relationship look like? What's that connection? When do you feel most connected to the divine? Is it usually something from outside of you that inspires it? Or is it a place you find inside of yourself? So if it's a place you find inside of yourself, then kind of, moving around that elephant to find different things would be, how do you see what you find inside of yourself reflected back at you in the world? And if you're a person who tends to touch base with God or with divine energy more from outside stimulation, how can you pull that further in and really bring it into the marrow of your bones? How can you self-identify with that which you see on the outside? How can you further that connection? That's spirituality. That's your personal relationship. And no matter how many years you've been practicing it, no matter how old you are, how new or young you are on your spiritual journey, there's always more. There's always more, and there's always the mystery to contemplate. So kind of diving into that, that's what this all is about. How do we continue to deepen our connection or renew it or reinvent it? I had a dream I want to share with you. In the dream, I recall I was traveling over a bridge and somehow ended up in the family room I grew up in. And in that place, I was paying attention to a lot of different things going on around me. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, which was a fairly, normal thing then, but it hasn't been for a while, my dad showed up like he was coming home from work. He had on his trench coat, his suit and tie. He was carrying a briefcase. I could hear the click-clacking of his shoes exactly as I remember as a child. And he showed up in my dream. And I lost my dad almost 15 years ago. But there he was. And my heart just burst. It was so wonderful to see him. I could smell him. I could feel him. There was this overwhelming comfort that came over me. And I just wanted to throw my arms around him. And that's what I did. So jumped up, gave him this big hug. And what I was really, really tuned into was the fact that I was on my tippy toes. I was on my tippy toes. And instead of him being much taller than I, instead of my arms being around his waist, I was on my tippy toes and trying to put my arms around his neck. And I was like overwhelmingly like straining so hard to kind of be big enough to hug him that way. I remember that really well in my dream. And as soon as that kind of strain got almost to the point that I realized I couldn't do it, there was this message. He didn't say anything in the dream, but the message was like, just, relax. You don't have to work so hard to give me a hug. Like, just go back down on your heels and just, kind of cozy in naturally, a lot more naturally. I don't have to, it was like this feeling of like, I don't have to be so big. Just relax and receive the hug and just let him hold me. And the minute that awareness came over me, I woke up. And it was just like, wow, I was just right there. And I had this amazing kind of message or presence come into me that made me realize that that wasn't really my dad in the dream. It was God. And I was trying so hard, and he was just saying, relax, I got you. Just receive this. Don't try so hard. And it was just so amazingly clear to me what that message was, and that it was God. And that reminded me of the book, The Shack, which was an incredible book for me, by William Paul Young, I believe. In that movie, in the book, what was really neat was that God kind of showed up the way Mac, the main character, needed. So God showed up as a nurturing woman when he needed nurturing. God showed up as this Native American father figure when he needed that kind of strength, when he needed that kind of support. And God shows up in all the ways that we need, but usually we're in the way blocking what it is to allow that to come through. So what a blessing and a gift to me that in that dream and after the dream that followed through, and it was like, oh my goodness, all the things I had been struggling with in my life at that time really needed kind of a father figure to let me relax into knowing that I had support, knowing that I had strength, knowing that I had all that without trying to be so big, without straining on my tippy toes, that I was allowed to just come back down into myself and receive that kind of love and support that's always waiting for us. And it's showing up exactly how you need it. But usually we're blocking it. So whether we need God to be our father or our mother or our sister, brother, a friend, a teacher, a listener, whatever it is we need, this divine presence in the universe is just waiting to meet us right where we need to be. We just need to get out of our own way to let it happen. So God shows up as exactly what we need when we need it so that we can heal. And it takes kind of strength and a letting go to let that happen so that we can allow it. And we have to break through those expectations and constraints that we put on ourselves to just kind of let that flow, to just let it flow, to let that single divine energy expressing as pure unconditional love in. Because what we forget when we focus on love is that we're very, first and foremost, meant to receive it. We are here to be loved. And in order to love others, we have to receive and be loved first. And so, regardless of where you are on that elephant, this is the heart of it. The heart of it is allowing yourself to be loved unconditionally and divinely, and just allow that to resonate. And so, we have this purpose of being loved, but we just put up all these blocks to it. We forget that it is the foundation of us, of our beingness, because we get so wrapped up in our doing. Who are we based on our deeds and what we do? Deeds can also be built in your beingness. Your worth is already there. You're already worthy of love. It's just we're in this kind of mind trap of not accepting that yet. So with all of that in mind, close your eyes and let's go into a little bit of a meditation to try to clear some of that and open ourselves more to this and, kind of explore your part of your elephant. See where God is with you today. Okay? So get comfortable. Tap into your breath. Close your eyes. We're going to set the intention to clear out all the obstacles that prevent us from receiving love. So let your breath become a little bit deeper, a little bit slower. Activate that third eye and open your hearts. Bring that breath into your heart space. Let it become warm, relaxed, and easy. And so we're going to start with recognizing our own legacy of brokenness. Our legacy as humans, egoic humans, karmically passing on that cellular vibration of brokenness. Recognizing that some of it is ours and some of it is that which we carry for others. And if it's in your highest good today, we're going to clear that and let it dissolve. So for right now in that heart space, See where your consciousness can identify where you're hurt, maybe where you struggle. Where is it that you might be suffering? And just sit with that, see it, expose that to the air, to the divine, to God. Just bringing it to light, out of the shadow. Recognize if your breath is getting a little more shallow, if it's getting a little faster, because sometimes it makes us a little anxious to look at these things. So while holding whatever it is you're looking at, in your mind's eye, just kind of bring breath to it, bring light to it, surround it with love. Hold it gently in the palm of your hand and simply open yourself to the idea of healing. You don't have to do anything special. Just be there without moving or changing your thought to hide it or to change the pain cycle. Just be right there with it. Breathe into it. Your breath being the divine breath. And with your breath, you're offering it up to the divine simply by lifting your hands in your mind's eye, letting go of the need to control it anymore. Truly surrendering it, releasing any conditions so that you can really connect with your breath, with your soul, with your own divine nature, with God. Drop your struggle. Drop your inner resistance to what is. Drop preference. Drop expectation. Drop judgment. Drop the propensity to seek pleasure or avoid pain. All part of your egoic mind. Drop seeking outside of yourself with your mind. Seeking approval, seeking comfort, seeking any kind of stimuli. They're all illusions. What is real is within you. So stay focused inside. Align your individual will with your divine will, that which is of your highest good. I'm going to say that one again. Some of us are having trouble shifting there. As we surrender, we breathe into the idea of allowing our individual will to line up with the blueprint of our divine will, that which is in our highest good. Surrendering what we think we want to going into the space of lifting us into everything we can be. Awakening the truth of who you are. Opening a new perspective of God today, a new dimension of connecting right here in this space of surrender. We are given such great power with the human mind, but the proper wisdom in knowing how to use it can only come through this divine alignment. So our Power is there. We need to ask for the wisdom to know how to align it. That's our communion with God, with our own divine nature. We are not created to do it alone or live alone or to be separate. Recognize how we are all one. We are in nature, a part of it, not separate from it. And when we align like this, we are in sync with universal energy, with love, with God. We are living sacred in the circle. So much of that circle that we don't even know or have explored yet, just like the elephant, but we are a part of it. It's all one. Oh. So a few more deep breaths, really pulling all of that work down through your body, through your feet to Mother Earth. Connecting, keeping that strong connection up through your seventh chakra, keeping your third eye open and your heart space vulnerable, surrendering. Come back to us in this sacred circle that holds you, that gives you the sacred space to always connect this way. And so, how is it that we can pull this into our everyday moments? How do we bring this sacred living outward? So we have our sacred inner living and our outward. This is where ritual comes in. This is where statues, altars, rosaries, malas. We create the sacredness around us to trigger and remind us how to go back inside, how to stay connected this way and weave that sacredness throughout our lives. In the everyday mundane, we can make that sacred. All the way into our meditative spaces that we intend to make sacred. So I encourage you all, whether it's to have a little altar in your home or to simply have statues that might remind you, like we have a lot of Buddha statues around our home because that image clicks me into my sacred. It's not worshiping a God, it's reminding me in every room who I am and what the expression of myself should be. Wearing malas on your wrist, carrying rosaries, certain jewelry, even just taking Post-it notes and sticking them around the house, putting one on your mirror, reminding you, you are here to be loved. Some of us do chanting, silent chanting in your head, having a mantra that you always go back to that helps pull you back into your breath, that helps you pull you back into creating the sacred space inside of you. And how do you create the space around you to be sacred? So put some thought into that. That's also kind of exploring the elephant. Rituals, ceremonies. You know, we get together for our Sunday service, and this is a certain ritual and it is a ceremony. But what do you do on your own? Do you pray every day? Formally, informally? Do you meditate? Do you have practices? When you're doing the dishes, is it just to get the chore done? Or can you do it in a way that's very mindful and offer that sacred act up? I've always loved the Zen saying, chop wood, carry water. Chop wood, carry water before awakening or before enlightenment. And after, chop wood, carry water. Life will look the same either way, but it's the reverence that you bring. And reverence doesn't mean seriousness. It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, always having this reverent, pious type of expression. That's one area of the elephant, right? But if I kind of feel my way around to another, it can be great joy. It can be great sorrow. It can be lightheartedness. One of my favorite ways to be spiritually connected is to gather with loved ones around my table, break bread, and share time together. And that is a sacred act also. So just reflect. How, if you don't already have those touch points in your life, can you create them for yourself? So that's part of, talked about that a little bit in last week or the week before in our later fellowship circle. But I wanted to bring that into the service and inspire you with some ideas of how you can kind of rebirth your connection to God, your communication with God, your belief in God. What is the truth for you? And to remind you that you are here to be loved. We'll conclude with a blessing. Call forth in your heart any names that you know we need to pray for right now. May your feet always take you back to the divine grace offered to you. May your heart always be open to receive love. May your mind and spirit deeply trust the divine wisdom offered to you, and may your ears always be open to hearing it. May your belief be greater than your doubt, and may your personal connection remain strong with the Creator. May all beings choose to experience divine grace and unconditional love, especially in times of hopelessness and grief. May all of our hearts find gratitude with every sunrise and peace with every moonrise. Walk sacred, talk sacred, live sacred. Aho.